Hello everybody and welcome to the first instalment of what I hope will be a semi-regular series here on the channel. As you all know, I'm a very lucky chap and get to drive a lot of very nice cars on a fairly frequent basis. But to me, one of the most exciting and interesting bits of the job is the side you never get to see. The bit when, after I've finished driving said lovely car, I get to sit down with the owner, learn a little bit more about them, their car buying history and how it is they've come to the situation they find themselves in. I'm sure many of you have seen places like this before. Nice big house, beautiful view of the English countryside and a driveway full of amazing cars. However, I often find that there are many misconceptions as to how all of this comes about, and I've decided to start talking to a few of the people I've got to know over the last few years and see if they'd be willing to share their stories, because I find them quite surprising, and I'm sure you will too. My very kind and willing guinea pig for this experiment is Richard Groves from the YouTube channel Challenge the Road. If you haven't heard of him, you've probably already seen some of his cars on my channel, including this blue Aston Martin V8 Vantage that he has modified to his specifications, the darker blue V8 Vantage S in the back, the Impreza 22B, and this bright orange Lamborghini Murcielago SV. Today's video is not about me though, and I will shortly hand you over to our subject, Richard. Before I do though, a small word of warning. Though there is no adult language in today's video, some of the topics discussed may not be suitable for particularly young viewers. And because this is the first in hopefully a long line of videos, I really would welcome all feedback you have on it so I can try and make the next installment even better. That's enough from me. Enjoy the video.
So I'm Richard Groves. I was born in Pembury Hospital near here, lived in Lamberhurst pretty much all my life actually, and have grown up near sort of the Brown Trout pub, near Buell Water, where I've recently done events, and I've been in Lamberhurst now for sort of 45 years. But yeah, I had a great childhood in Lamberhurst. The main thing for me was always being on my BMX. My mum would say, you go out in the morning, you only come back when you're hungry. And that's what I used to do, and I used to love the bikes, the old Diamondbacks and that, riding in the woods. I remember that vividly, setting up BMX tracks there, really enjoying that when I was young. So the first cars I really remember are when my dad had a big Land Rover, and we used to go to Wales all the time, and I always remember that vividly because he shut my hand in the door, and I think I can still feel the pain today. But he had the Range Rovers, and he always had two cars, which is quite interesting when I think back on that. So he always had a 4x4 and he always had a sports car. So I remember Sierra XR4i he had. I used to really like that car. And he had a BMW 525i. My mum had a Mercedes, which was I think it was a 1.9. I really liked the 2.3 16 valve. I remember those cars vividly. My grandfather done exceptionally well in business, and he had an Aston DB6. Unfortunately, I never saw that, but my mum tells me stories of driving that when she was 17. So you can imagine that today. She said she used to go out to the pub. Really, you know, lovely memories of cars and that back then. So the earliest car I can remember really wanting myself would have been the Lancia Delta, VW Golfs, especially tuning them. I always remember looking in car magazines all the time at, I think it was Ottinger back then, anything you could do to make it go quicker or modify or change it. But they were the cars I really lusted after, those VWs, the Lancia Integrale, HF Turbo. Those were the main ones. Yeah, you know, I love B-roads, I love smaller cars. The Golf Mark II was a fantastic car, 16 valve, used to love that car, like oak green metallic ones. And I was drawn to them because of hot hatches. I loved hot hatches, smaller cars, and cars have got so much bigger over time now, but that really drew me to them, and always wanted that sort of quick hot hatch. At the time, you know, supercars and that were not a major interest for me. I was more interested in going out and driving and smaller cars and just going and meeting my friends. I was always the one driving. I'd never drink actually when I was younger, even probably up until 30. I didn't really drink. I was always driving and I wanted to drive. I would just be picking up my friends and driving and that was my solace, I suppose. I wanted to go out and listen to music. I mean, I always tried to get the best hi-fi in it. I'd go to Road Radio everywhere. Can I put more tweeters in it? Can I put more subwoofers? I mean, I remember times going to Tunbridge Wells with my friends, and I had a BMW at the time, and we literally had stuff like Skid Row on full blast and had 100 people round the car in the middle of Tunbridge Wells at the traffic lights and just stopped all the traffic, because that was my thing. Cars, music, big wheels, that was my passion. Every pound I could earn went to cars. You're looking around sort of 91, 92, around that time. So I'd have been about 18 to 21. The first car I had was a VW Golf Match. But I had driving lessons, but at the time I was probably a bit cocky, as I only had 2 lessons. Went and passed my test, thought I could drive even though I'd never driven, but I passed somehow. And then my mum bought me a Golf Match in white, little engine. It was a 1.3 petrol. It's a great car actually, but I took it up the road here just after I passed and put it against the gate post up the top, and had to walk all the way back down and say to my mum, can you come and get the car? I tried to reverse at the top of the road and I've put it against the post and rail, and there was a big dent in the side. So that was my first car, and my mum was just laughing, going, oh God, I don't believe this. So I've never worked for anyone else apart from myself. That was something I chose, always wanted my own business. I started my own business at 18. At the time I was, aiming to be a professional golfer, and I had to sell my golf clubs to fund the business, and actually give up the Golf Match to put the money into the bank to keep going, and my dad would give me lifts. So I've always worked for myself to this day. It started out in mobile phones, and that was another sort of funny story again. When the first phone call I had a little room with my dad. It was 8 foot by 8 foot, and the first phone call was a receiver, and he said he had something like 5,000 NEC P4s. And they were for sale, and they were £110, and I sold them to Caldwell, I think, for 113, and made £3, so 15,000. That was my first Yellow Pages call. That's why the company was called Active, because I wanted it to be A. And obviously the C was pretty good, but obviously someone brought out ABC Communication, which I wasn't too happy with. But that's how I got that call, first Yellow Pages, and I thought life was easy. And that kick-started us, because suddenly I had £15,000 in the bank from the first phone call. I was declared bankrupt at 23, which was pretty horrendous. What happened was, when my dad lost his business when I was 18, I had an American Express card that I signed, and they come to me for the money at 23 because I signed the back, even though I had nothing to do with his company. So that was a huge setback, to spend 3 years of my time bankrupt from 23 to 26. And in that time, I just regrouped. I didn't have a bank account. Taught me a lot about stuff as well, not having any money, being able to be very, very clever with how I work and my time. And that was really hard. But looking at it now, I think, everyone has failures in what they do, and I'm failing probably all the time, but you get better. But that was quite a tough one to take at 23, and then obviously come back from that. So during that time, I just had the company car, and it was just sign written with Active Digital. As funny stories on that, because my sister used to get phone calls at the office, and they'd been overtaken by this Active Digital Peugeot, 106 GTI at high speed, and I would say, we're the fastest phone company in the south, But those were days when I just done marketing myself. We didn't have much money, so everything to me was putting everything on the car. So people could see us and gain more business from that. When it started to turn around, and I'd obviously gone past that point when I was sort of about 26, it actually just finished, and I thought, I'm going to treat myself to either a Subaru or a Mitsubishi at the time. I remember driving the Mitsubishi Evo 6, and the P1 had come out, and I decided on the P1. I'd had a few Subarus before, which I'd really enjoyed, but I went for the P1, and then obviously that ended up in a pretty horrific car crash. So what happened there is that we had our office in Paddock Wood. We were getting broken into, and it was, when in the end the story is it was the same guy, but he broke into it 6 times. Very quick succession, probably within 6 weeks. So one of the evenings I got an alarm call at 2 in the morning to say we'd been broken into. So I headed out in the P1. Headed over there, met the police, went through it all. So now we're sort of 5 in the morning. Started to head back. I remember it was the night of the storms, 2001. Extremely wet, windy. I just wanted to get home. That's all I remember. I was tired. Went along the road, and I was on a straight, and all I remember is just seeing like a lake. That's all I could see. And I just went off. And I remember sort of looking up at the sky, and obviously the car rolled and barrel rolled off the A21, and luckily for me, it ended up on all 4 wheels, and I was able to make a phone call, because back then you had the Nokia car kits, which were the best car kits, the best. It's the only thing that stayed in the car. And when I sat in the car, it was I couldn't see that well, but I'd realised the skin from my head had gone over my eyes. So I thought, right, I've lost my eye, and quickly you start to evaluate. I've lost my eye. I'm not sure where I am, but I know I'm in a field. I rang my mum. That's the first I just said, Mum, I'm in a field, you know, I'm in trouble. Yeah. And then the next person I phoned was my friend who was with me at the office, Jez, phoned him. And I was so far off that they'd said that when I went off, because it was such a big drop off, it was like 30 metres from the first roll to the landing to where I was, and they couldn't find me. So I could see the fire engines, see the ambulances, but they couldn't see me, and I couldn't get out the car because the car had crushed so much. I couldn't get out, so I thought, and I got so cold so quick. I remember the coldness, and luckily Joe's husband Lance was in the army. He sort of saw something and actually jumped the whole hedge, everything, like action man, come over and put his coat round me, and I remember that, and it kept me warm. He said, just don't panic, you stayed with me, and then there was fire engines and the lights, and they cut me out, and I got out. And that was, you know, the only time where I thought that's it, you know, my life's over. When it went off, when I went off, it went like the telly at night. It just went, and I thought that's it. That's the end of my life. So every day since then has been like a blessing, and I just do everything I can, and I mean like as much as I can every day. I don't think any day I finish the day and think I couldn't have done more. So the injuries for the crash were quite interesting, because back then you didn't have, I'd say, the care around head injuries that you have now. The big thing for me was I got out the car and I went to hospital, and obviously the cuts here, the cuts around the back of my head, they just stitched them up, and I went home. And then when you get home, I thought, crikey, if I go to sleep, I'm going to die. It was just, so I couldn't sleep. I was at my mum's, my girlfriend come back, and I think now the treatment is so much better, because that shouldn't have happened really. But they didn't know the extent of the crash. They didn't know I'd rolled 6 or 7 times. I actually snapped the seatbelt in the Subaru. They said they haven't seen that before. And I do remember my head going out the side window on the car. So the next 6 months were pretty bad. I had horrendous headaches, you know, to the point that I'd go fishing every day. Just go fishing. My sister would keep the business running, and the headaches were just there for probably over a year. I mean, I was still getting glass out 3 years later from my head, you know, so, you know, you could still you feel it, and you go, oh, it's a bit, you know, and I hope, you know, things have really moved on now, but then that was a big mistake. I should have stayed in that hospital longer. And then I ended up having to have quite a lot of therapy. I couldn't drive straight, so it sounds really weird now. I was thinking about this last night, but I couldn't drive on straights. I could drive on corners. So I remember my girlfriend said, we're going to go to France. I said, okay, let's go to France. Great, yeah, I want to get away, you know. And I was breaking down every half an hour, just crying, because their roads are just dead straight. I was thinking, just get me off these roads. I can't go in straight lines. It was just because the accident was on a straight. And when we look back now, I actually had a puncture. One thing I've really learnt on that, I'd had 3 puncture repairs on that car. In quick succession, I should have just got a new tyre. But I could see the gold cuts on the corner going down. And then it's probably only till now I've been able to accept that and really sort of use it as a positive, and feel like, you know, you've got to go forward, you've got to be able to drive cars. It doesn't happen like this all the time. So we're looking at 2001, so I would have been about 26. Just after I was 27, I had a deal from O2 where Martin Dawes sold and O2 come in. And I remember that they said, we're going to pay you quite a lot of money. And I had my little pad there, and I was writing down, and I put 355 on it. And it was enough to get a 355, and that's what I wanted. And since the accident, I just wanted everything I wanted, and then nothing was going to stop me, and nothing's going to get in my way. So went to not Simon Furr, I went to, because he's now left there, but Ferrari Centre, and met Simon. And I said, in my mind I had 68,500, that's what I wanted to spend. And I went in there, and there was a red with cream manual Berlinette of the car, and it was 68,500. I said to Joe, has someone set this up? You know, because how can it be the same as what I've said to you in the car? And Went for a test drive and I was absolutely blown away. I thought, this is the fastest car ever. And obviously not now, but back then when he accelerated, because the acceleration was so long, and I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. This is fantastic. And I bought that. And then I really struggled again to work. I really struggled because that was just my dream car. So I couldn't get up in the morning. Then we had the Gulf War and different things, and the values were dropping. I thought, oh my God, I'm losing money on this car, because most of my cars had been, you know, 15,000, 18,000, 30. But when you get into that sort of realm, you're thinking, oh, I'm losing a lot of money. And I decided to sell the car because I had no motivation. And over time, I've probably had 8 or 9 355s now, because you see the journey. I'm buying them and I'm giving them back and selling them, and then I have to have the fire to go and get another one. So that's how I ended up. You know, I would not have that drive because I had that car. And I remember just being in bed in Paddlewood, looking out the window at this 355 and just thinking, I've done it. I've done it. There's nothing to do. What do I do? Yeah, I mean, I remember having the car, taking it home to my dad's, and I lived with my dad at the time, and my brother used to come down and we'd not shoot so much film, but we'd take photos. He had a Subaru as well. The first thing I remember with the 355 is that when you accelerate, there was like a butterfly valve, and I can hear that now in my head. You know, you accelerate, you get not much noise, then it opens, then it goes, then it revs, and I think that is just mega on that car, and I couldn't recommend them enough. You know, I think that they drive fantastic. It was just the steering let them down in the long run, because obviously cars moved on and that. But I think it was one of the only cars that looked perfect from every angle. There was nothing on that car that I thought you could really improve looks-wise. I love pop-up lights. You know, when you let someone out and you flash and the lights go up, and I think that's really cool. But I drove it quite a bit, but at the time I wasn't a collector. I wasn't, you know, I just would go and drive it. I wouldn't really care. I didn't really go travel that far in it. I was always pretty local in the car. When I first got it, I thought I'll overtake my friends, because I knew they were at the pub and went out and they didn't know I had it. And I remember on the A21 they were there, and I went past them. And Richard, is that an MR2? No, it's a 355. What? It can't be a Ferrari. I said, yeah, it's a Ferrari. Ferraris, you know. And they were just amazed just with the key. But my memories have always been when I had like a mini Metro when I first started. I always used to imagine that it had a Ferrari, the yellow badge with the horse, and that really kept me going. Actually, I think that when you haven't got a lot and you're trying to achieve, and one thing I've learned now being older is I need to have patience. I need to just take my time. Things aren't going to happen overnight. But that was always, you know, my memory was driving and pretending my car was a Ferrari. Yeah, so at the 355 time, I had obviously the Subarus, and I wanted to have a 22B, and I managed at that point to get a 22B, and I used that as sort of a daily with the 355, and that was because, I mean, it was Ryan Giggs's car. It was £30,000 back then with sort of 5,000 miles, and I wanted to drive it. And what I did, which was probably clever with mileage and stuff, everything I do is within 10 minutes. So if you look at my home, the school, the golf course, the fishing lakes, everything's within 10 minutes. I don't travel hardly anywhere. And that was something that I always wanted time. Because if I got time, then I'm the richest person. So my life back then was pretty, I'd say probably the best it was ever been then. Actually, you know, at 30, met my wife, and I had 22B with the 355. Then I had an S3 with the 355. So I sold the 22B, had a bit of an accident in the 22B, and that sort of put me off again. I thought Subarus are trying to kill me. And then I had the M3s. So the E46 come out. And I remember that and thinking, what a car that E46 is. So I had a silver titanium one, and I ended up having lots of M3s. I mean, probably 8 E46s over time. I'd sell them and want another one, and I loved the manual. And the Subaru sort of faded away because the M3 just done everything, that car. You know, you had this fantastic engine, fantastic handling, 4 seats, big boot. But I always had 2 cars. You know, even I'm just thinking back a little bit from there, I had a ProDrive Forester with the 22B. And I was thinking back on that, thinking that's just like ultimate. I went fishing in the Forester and went out in the 22B. And that was like, and I'm still looking for a ProDrive Forester. I can't find one, but I'd love to have another one. So 2008 was very, very tough. I've learned a lot from that recession, actually, huge amount. I mean, I've been through a recession in 92 where we lost our home. Been through a recession in 2001 where I sold the 355 because of the Gulf War and things, and then you come into 2008. I think it's a great year and a terrible year. The day my daughter was born, I was called into a big meeting, and my daughter was born at 6 o'clock. The meeting was at 9, so I left the hospital about 7, drove to this meeting at 9, and they'd cut all my money. And I thought, what am I going to do? So I had to make 5 people redundant in the business, went on the way back, do all this stuff. I remember feeling like I wasn't prepared. I didn't know this was going to happen so quickly. It was sort of August, they started talking about it. September, things were really getting bad. But I made the cutbacks. And I always remember my dad saying to me at the time, he said, Richard, why are you cutting back on the staff? Why don't you keep them? I said, well, but Dad, you didn't cut back and you went out of business. And I remember that from 92. So I said, that's why you have to cut back. And it was pretty awful, actually. I absolutely hate losing staff or making redundancies or people going. I had to take it very, very personally. And, you know, having my daughter born on that day, then 2-3 weeks later, I'm thinking, how do I say to my wife, who's got a new baby, that we might have to sell the house? So I bided my time. 4 or 5 weeks went past, and then I was able to keep that, which is the best thing to today. I still own that, and I just thought, just try and keep hold of stuff. Try and keep hold of stuff. Don't panic, because everyone's panicking. Everyone's doom and gloom. It's going to end. And then 2009, it picked up for me. We had one of our biggest customers sign. I thought, crikey, I could have over panicked here, and this really helped me in the last recession that just happened. I mean, with COVID and all this, it really helped me. But I went to Simon Furlonger, and I thought, right, that's it. I'm going to get a 430. And I did. I bought the Rosso Mugello 430 and thought it was amazing. Loved that car. And then end of 2009, I decided to set up an app business. And I wanted to do that, and I decided to sell the car to fund that, which I did. And it was weird because I actually got more for the car than I'd paid for. And I thought, oh, that's good. So I paid 135 and they gave me back 140. I thought, I've driven it. Thinking, this was my first sort of intro into appreciating cars and making money. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. So I put the money in the business, and then ILG went like that. Very quickly again. I was the sports app for England Rugby, Lions tours. I had 30 odd sports teams very quickly on a sports app. I bought a 16M. So I went back to Simon Furlonger and had a 16M. And it was in black, and I bought that, and I had that. And then I had a few drives in it, and I was silly really, but at the time, you know, I've learned a lot from that. I used to drive it a lot in the winter, and I found the brakes didn't really work very well, and it just made me a little bit edgy, and I thought, this is a bit edgy, young children, I think I'll sell this 16M. So I went back again, and I got money again. I made another £5,000. I thought, Christ, this is easy, I'm buying these Ferraris. I thought maybe we'd go a bit bigger with these next ones. So this is around 2012 now. I started to think about more, what are these cars? I don't understand this market. I was only bought cars and worked out how much I was going to lose. Now I'm looking at cars thinking, how much am I going to make? So I'm thinking, this is really interests me now. And I thought F40. So I thought that was the car I want. I want an F40. That's my favourite car. That's what I'm going to do. And I remember going there and agreeing a deal on an F40, £300,000, one owner car. And I thought, oh, it's a lot of money. And the interest rate was actually quite high. And I got a little bit edgy. I thought, and I spoke to a friend of mine, and he said, you don't want that car. It's too much money. Don't put it on that car. And in the end, I rung them and said, I won't buy it. Now, I'd already done a test drive and the car, I had to push it, jump start it, so it wasn't the best impression of an F40. And when I drove it, I thought, it's okay. I didn't overly gel with it because it was a short test drive and I've had to push it. And then I thought, right, what can I get which I think is a bit more affordable, Richard? I think you're just jumping way too high. It's an F40. And remember, these were like 150,000. So they'd already, in my mind, doubled. So they were 300. And this is where we sort of start to get onto rally cars. So 2013. So 2013, I thought, the road cars aren't overly doing it for me. And I'm tuning them and doing all this stuff to them, but I want a rally car. I love Colin McRae. I watch every rally and I go to the Wales GB. I want a rally car on the road. And I'm crazy enough to have a rally car on the road. I think I can drive them. I'm going to do it. So ended up looking for one, and we found one at Walker's. And this is the actual car. So it was £40,000 back then. So when I drove this and went, oh wow, this, you know, it's better than an F40. In my mind, I thought this is just the best car ever. It's a rally car and it's a Lancer and it's got Martini stickers and it's just the best thing. I didn't have the great experience at the start with that car, but that's the story there of sort of not owning the F40 but then coming into the Lancia. Yeah, so now we're into a really fantastic time of my life, because 2013 I was able to purchase my house back, which is another huge story. I mean, to tell the truth, I'd never been down this road again in 20 years. And I mean, around this area I wouldn't go because the pain was just too much. You know, when we left here, I said to my mum at 18, as we go up the drive, I will buy this house back. Okay, there's no if or buts, I will buy it back. My dad purchased this and I would have been 12 when I had this house, and we had it for 6 years. It felt like longer because it was such an immense family home. We had such good times here. So this was originally a doctor's, then it turned into the farm that was here for a long time, and I think it was owned by the Lord of Bayham, so Bayham Abbey. He had it here, and this was the home that sort of managed a lot of the farming here. And there's still springs and wells down here that feed all the big houses. Not now, but they used to feed them all through. So they were magical times really, from 86 to 93 when we moved out. We had our houses in Brenchley, and we found a house in Frant, which is up the road. So what happened was the estate agent for the Frant home come to my home. And I had my office there, just a little room, and it had a picture of this house. And he said, I've just been from there. It's coming for sale, but you can't afford it. Well, how much is it? And he gave me a price, and it was a lot more than this one. And I thought, okay. So he left, and the first thing I did, I said to my wife, I'm buying back my old family home. I'm selling all the cars. So I sold all the cars. I thought, I've got to just earn money. I've got to earn money. I've got to, so I come here, I got most of the money, but not enough. I was like £500,000 short. And I thought, I need to buy myself time. I have to have this house. If I don't have this house, I may never get another opportunity. So they booked a viewing here, and I come back in and I felt totally sick. Driving up the driveway there, I felt ill. I come in and said, hi, we'll show you around. I'm thinking, well, I know it pretty well. And, you know, the first thing that hit me was like the piano where my sister used to play still there. And we said, oh, here's the cellar, down in the cellar, my golf clubs. Come in the garage here, my old table tennis table still here, 20 years on. My snooker cues are in there. Paul thinking, I don't believe this. She's freaking me out. All my mum's fittings are the same in the house. Green carpet, everything she put in, nothing's changed. So I am just like, whoa. So I think, well, I have to get it. And I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell my mum and dad. I didn't even tell anyone in the family. I thought, until I get it, I'm not telling anyone. But I thought, I have to get it. And I thought, all I can do is work on the price. That's all I can do, because I can't get this much money together and I need more time. So got to know the owners here, said to them, you know, do you want to move out at Christmas, or why don't you spend your Christmas here? I'm just buying myself more time. And they said, okay, well, let's do it in February. I think February, right? I said, but I need a better price. I said, I can't, and they knew it was my old family home, and they knew I wanted, and very wealthy guy. And I said, can I meet with you and just go through it? I really want this home. And I remember being out in the field here chatting with him. And they had 3 children that lived here. And he said to me, Richard, what can you afford? And I said, well, I can afford this. He said, you can have it as long as my son could buy it back for you if you sell it. So we done the deal. And I was able to get it. And I thought, you know, fantastic. But now I've got this massive house, you know, and I thought, right, what I'm going to do is the first time I get it, I'm going to go and see my mum. So the first day I got it, come here, I thought, right, I'm going to go and see my mum. So I went and saw my mum, and that was just like a magic moment for me. And she couldn't believe it. She was like, oh my God, you bought it, that's amazing. I can't wait to come around. And then the same for my dad, who had the walled garden here. So I've gone from £300 in my account at 18, you know, having to sell everything, to then being able to get this family home back. It was unfortunately was a big home. You know, I wish it had been a lot smaller. Maybe it took me less time. But other interesting things are, I was 38 and my dad was 38 when he bought it. So there's lots of little things happening. And then the estate agent said, Richard, we want to run a full feature on this. This is an amazing story. And I said no. Obviously being a very private person, and you know, the cars I had, no one knew. Only since I've had a YouTube channel, no one knew about my cars. It's me and my friend Calvin. We had the cars, we drove them, and not many people knew about them. A lot of them didn't even realise they were real. You know, a lot of the cars I had, my wife didn't know about them. I'd be at dinner parties and they'd say, I saw you in an Aston Martin, and I'd go, oh yeah, and then she'd go, well, when did you get that? I said, well, I've already sold it, I had it 6 months. You know, and I kept them all to myself. I just wanted to drive them myself, listen to my music, and that's where I got all my business ideas. And that had sort of rolled on to where I am with the cars today. So a lot of my thinking is just driving. I just go for a drive most evenings. I go for a drive, I listen to my music, and I think about, and then I come back and then I plan what I want to do. Everything just seems to revolve around cars, fishing, golf, everything I enjoy, and like technology, everything's around that. But Paul was a great guy, and I met him because of my head injury. So what happened was, I joined a lake in Horseman Den, Furnace Pond, and I was fishing there for 6 months to just recuperate, and that was my own way of healing myself, I suppose. And I met Paul, and he said, what cars you got? We got chatting, and he had an RB5. Which I love, still one of my favourite all-time cars. And then he was getting a P1, and I said, I want to get a P1, you want to get a P1. So this is that time when we're sort of 27, and I remember great times with him where he would phone me, I'd be at the office, Richard, I've got this big pike, like £28, come and take a photo, and I'd race up there. And then where he was, he built his own lake. So we used to go out in the P1s, and we'd try and find lakes. I didn't have enough money to buy them. He wanted to buy a lake. We went out. I remember stories like we would be looking on Ordnance Survey maps, going through people's fields, trying to find lakes and that. And as I say, he just loved the Subarus. I always remember times when he would say to me, Richard, go and drive my P1. I just want to go in the passenger seat because I want to feel what it's like. And I would literally go out with him and drive that P1 hard with him in the passenger seat, going, I'd love that. And he'd come back and he'd go, I love that, that's amazing. Then I got the 355 and took that there, and we're getting stuck on his drive because he was like, Richard, you got to come round. I'm like, Paul, your drive's like that. And I remember it going on the phone, thinking, oh no, this Ferrari going to be damaged. And he then built his own lake that I fished, which was about 3/4 of an acre in his own garden. And he had his music studio, he had his P1, and he had his fishing lake and his house. And I thought, oh, that's just the nuts. That's what I want. That's what. Unfortunately, from there, Paul, you know, he'd won an Ivan Novello award for Mr. Blobby, and he was earning a lot of money and working from home. And he would go fishing, and he had his P1, and it was fantastic times. But unfortunately, he then had, you know, a lot of problems and ended up committing suicide. Unfortunately, and that was a pretty difficult time because. I had to, when he was not having a good time, I would go and clean his P1, and that's one of the things I loved with cars, was always cleaning them. And I always remember him, you know, saying to me, Richard, thanks so much for cleaning my car and that. And then he would go out and do donuts around the field. So I wasn't just cleaning the outside, I was cleaning the inside because there was just all grass in it because he's going around the field. And then, obviously, near the end, when it, you know, things weren't good, I just had a really funny dream that he had passed away and I was selling his car for him, and that's what happened. I got a phone call to say he'd passed away, and then about 2 months later it was, could you sell the P1? I said I just couldn't do it, and I just couldn't do it, you know, at the time. It was just too much. But I remember that, you know, time really fondly. Some of the best times of my life, actually, having, you know, someone who was into cars like me, which I didn't have. You know, Paul was just, we just talk about cars all the time and just want to go out in our cars and we want to go fishing. So it was like a dream pair, really. Yeah, so then it brings us into 2014, and this was the time when I'd had the Lancia, I loved the Lancia, and I started to really think about collecting cars and having cars that appreciate. So from there, I thought I want a Colin McRae rally car, and I think that rally cars are undervalued. And that was, so I started to look, and it was around just before Christmas, and I saw an advert for a Subaru Impreza WRC car, test car from Burns, and I thought, right, okay, I'm going to research this, have a look, and then I thought, no, I'm going to phone the guy. So I phoned the guy, and he actually he just sold the 22B001 for about, I think about 40k. And the Subaru come up and it was about 75, and I thought, a Subaru World Rally car, I'll do that. I'll go for it. So I did. So I said, look, I'll go for that. He's happy. I'm happy. I think, I didn't even know you could sort of, you know, buy these cars at this sort of price. I thought they've got to go up, and I could use them on the road, and they're road legal. I think, you know, there's something here. Why would you buy a race car and you can't use it? And so anyway, I'd done that. But then the next day, the Colin McRae car come up, and I thought, oh my God, I'd rather have the Colin McRae car than the Subaru. But because I'd committed on the Subaru, I didn't want to let him down. I thought, we're supposed to be doing a new kitchen, right? Now, the new kitchen is probably nearly what the Focus is. I thought, I have to have that Focus. I thought, right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and see my wife and say, we've only been in here like a year. Why don't we see how it looks, see how it goes, and do the kitchen later? Okay, so I'm literally on my laptop looking at this car. I go in the kitchen, cup of tea, just thinking, why don't we just take our time? You know, we might have to. Oh, okay, then don't worry. Bang, straight back in. I'm straight back in. I buy it. I'm on to David Bogie. Can I buy the Focus? And we agree a deal, around £100,000. And David's got lots of contacts. And I said, could it go back into Colin McRae colours? He said, Richard, I know all the people, I'll get it done for you. And this went on for about a year. The car went to Ford, had it all done, period correct. The guy had come out of retirement to put the stickers on who originally put them on. And then about a week before, David's got the car, and he says, Richard, my dad said, you know, could I keep it? And I said, no, I can't. I really want that car. So I got the car, and it's looked absolutely amazing, and it's a Colin McRae car. And I thought, and I hadn't told anyone again. And I thought, right, I'm going to set my friends up here. So we used to love PlayStation, and I obviously have the PlayStation car with the exact reg, the exact car. I thought, right, I'm going to set them up here. I'm going to get a PlayStation. So I went and got a PlayStation, got the game. And I said, let's go on this car game. I've got this car. And they're like, Richard, what are you talking about? You know, you're like 40 years old. We're not going to play. I said, come on. And then I went, stuff this. Took them round here, lifted the thing up, and there's the real car. And they went, you're unbelievable. How have you got the real? And you haven't told anyone? I said, no, I haven't told anyone. And then from there, I thought, right, with this car, I'm going to build that history. So obviously it being PlayStation Reg, now in period correct colours. Now I'm adding value. And I'm starting to see these appreciate. So within a year, you're probably saying it's 200,000. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm getting a bit more excited. So now I've got a hobby that I love, and I've had a huge amount of cars. I started to write them down. So I've had 120 cars over time. You know, loads of RS4s, all different cars, and I changed them all the time, but it's always losing money. And I thought, I'm going to make money on these cars. I'm going to start picking cars that people haven't got or don't know enough about, or I'm going to build the history up of them. They'll be very limited. And I started to do that. And like the Subaru, when that arrived, I mean, I had problems with that where I lost the brakes and steering on the World Rally car and crashed. First time out. And then met Stuart Hall, who's Colin McRae's chief engineer. at Subaru, and we got a great relationship, and he put this car back, and it's now worth more than it was. And I thought, crikey, you crashed the car and they're worth more. So this is a great thing, you know, and I've, from there, have started to build this collection, but of stuff I like. I wouldn't buy a car that was going to appreciate that I didn't really enjoy or have a passion for. It would have to be something I really wanted. Like, I will never sell this Lancia. You know, I will never sell the Subaru rally car because they mean too much for me from that era. And I'm starting to notice now that, you know, my stuff is quite, I wouldn't say niche, but, you know, at the time, rallying, people look at F1 now and don't realise that rallying was bigger than F1 in my time. And it was fun, and because you had characters, you know, you had Colin McRae, Richard Burns, Mackinnon, all these people out charging round. I mean, when I went and watched them in the forest, I couldn't believe the speed, couldn't believe it, lunatics. But also, I mean, like Colin McRae was like a Lara Croft in America. I didn't think he was real. He went to that X Games. I didn't think he was a real person, Nicky Grizzly. He's not real. No, he is a real person. I mean, he rolled over and come second by a second. So he's, you know, absolute legend. So to own his car is just, you know, a massive privilege. So it's the Ford Focus WRC from 2001, driven by Colin at Catalonia to 6th place. It's a very famous rally where the rally before he crashed and he damaged his hand. And they said to carry on, but they didn't want him to carry on driving. And then he said, look, you know, you have to cut my fingers off if you know, because I want to race. You know, he wanted to win that year. I think he ended up losing by just a couple of points, but he was bandaged up. He drove with one hand to 6th place, and apparently when he finished, the rally drivers come out and clapped him in because it was such an achievement to drive with one hand, you know, a WRC car on the stages. I mean, I have enough trouble driving them with two hands, so one hand must be incredible. But then on from there, David Bogie won a lot of Scottish rally championships. Marco Martin drove it. He'd done a Monte Carlo as well, so it's got a really nice history with it. I had the cars here and I had them in storage, and I thought it was just a waste. I thought, I want people to see them and enjoy them, but realistically, you know, David said to me when he gave me the car, Richard, don't drive this car. It's a 100% car. It's a waste of time on the road. So I've never really driven it, apart from just around here bits. So the museum was an idea. I've been to Bewley for 10 or 12 years with the family, and I just thought, could I have a car in here? You know, could I? I don't know. Is it, you know, for me, I just feel like a normal person. I don't feel it's special at all. We come back again and they said, we'd love to have the Colin McRae car. So I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have a Colin McRae car in Bewley Museum. This just isn't real, you know. I haven't actually been down there to see it on display yet. I went down with Stuart, done a quick video when I was down there, but I just wanted to enjoy the day and to have that now, because when I went there, they had a very small rally section. I think there's only 2 or 3 rally cars, and I thought if they had that one, and then as I increased the collection, I thought maybe there'd be more room and more room for more of my cars, and then maybe I'll just go down there for a coffee. And we're remote working everywhere, and I could go and see my cars, and other people can enjoy them and go, there's Colin McRae's car, there's Richard Burns. Yeah, so then I wanted to invest more in cars because I'd seen these rally cars and I'd seen the values increasing. So I ended up getting an offer from Ferrari to have a 458 Speciale, and I thought, great, I'm going to go for one of them. Again, that's more money again. It was like 230,000, so that was pushing me up to the most expensive car I'd ever bought. And I bought that, and I enjoyed that. And then I went to GT3 RS as well, and I had that alongside the Speciale. And I thought, this is unbelievable. I'm buying cars, and the GT3 RS is 100,000 more than I paid for it. I thought, this is a no-brainer. I thought, I'm going to go bigger now. And McLaren had come out, and the 675 was on the scene. And I thought, right, I'm going to buy as many 675s as I can afford. And I'd seen the Speciale go from 235 to over 300, and I thought, this car's the fastest. And I remember vividly just sitting by waiting for Top Gear, waiting for that lap time. Chris Evans, and 675 blitzes everything. I'm thinking this is going up in money, these cars. And they absolutely tanked that car. I couldn't sell them. In the end, I couldn't even give the car away. It took me 2 years to sell 2 of them. Absolutely crazy. And the Speciale was fine. But what happened is that I'd watched quite a lot of reviews on the car on YouTube. And that was probably where I went wrong, because I was probably watching some of the people who probably didn't know enough about cars, and they were very difficult to get in and out of. So the first thing I picked up on was there was a garage near here that had one. The owner bought one, done exactly the same as me, tanked in money. And I thought, right, okay, it's not just me, tank, because he said he couldn't get in and out of it. So what I thought is the wealthier people buying this car couldn't actually get in and out the car because of the seats and the seal. Then when I drove it, you need the lift on all the time. So it's not drivable for me. Then the lights were horrendous on the car. So I thought, well, I can't drive at night, so why have I got this car? When you get it going, yes, it's fantastic, and probably it's a track car. And I sold them and made huge losses and thought, that is so annoying. I lost so much money on those cars. And it was very difficult to sell them. So, you have that kick in the teeth and you think, but I don't think I've done anything wrong. It was just the time. And now 675s have this huge range. Some of them are going up, some of them are going down. But I was taking like 100K loss on the car, within 3-6 months, which I never saw. I never saw that happening. Maybe I should have kept the knot, but I just had a poor feeling about McLaren at the time as well. I mean, it went for a service and it was like 3 months. I thought, what is this? And then I had a flat battery. I said, don't open the door, the window's going to smash. And I just think, what? These cars ready for what I wanted? And to tell the truth, with the Ferrari and the Porsche, I had no problems. But that was a real sting in the tail, and that still hurts me today. And I think I want to get more of that money back. Yeah, so from there I started to think more and more about the cars, and I ended up buying the Murcielago SV. I went to VVF and saw it there. I'd never seen one before live, and I thought, wow, that's a lot of car, that. And it stayed there for about a year. And I always remember it's hottest day of the year, and I thought, I need to go somewhere cool. Where's cool? VVS is cool. I'll go in there. And I went in there. It was just as hot as my office. And I thought, what's the deal with this Murcielago? They said, Richard, it's going to go to auction. I said, I think that's going to go up one day. So I bought it. And actually, to drive, I'd watched a lot of the reviews on the car, and they said it was uncomfortable. But actually, it's a really good car. And the engine and the noise, and that is a car that makes you feel alive. And I thought, crikey, this is a great car. This will go up. Unfortunately for me, it's like the lowest mileage UK car. When I started to look into it, there were 6 UK cars. There's only 3 left. This one had 3,000 miles. It's done 4,500 now since I've had it. So it's the lowest miles car, and they've started to go up to the point where one sold in America for $1 million. So that's where, as I say, 13, I started to understand about values, things going up, how to pick cars, and that was then my biggest purchase, was the Murcielago. But I'd bought lots of little cars in between. I bought a Verdi York Lancia Delta. I love that car, but I paid 11,000 and sold it for 35. Within 18 months. I bought a 968 Sport for 12,000. I had a guy offer me within a month 18. So I was starting to think, crikey, these cars are turning round. Then you think about tax benefits of having just a few cars, the capital gains, and I wanted to do it more. So I started to really push on with the collection then. So then obviously we had these COVID times, and at the time I made mistakes, but also I made some good decisions. I had a Tommy Mackinnon Evo, one of the lowest mile ones, fantastic car. And I'd paid, I think, 38K and had it at VVS for 49. COVID happened. Someone offered me 40. I took it. I thought the world was going to end. I thought, cars are going to drop. Richard, just try and get out of stuff, I had a manual R8 that I sold as well at the time. I actually bought that for my sister because I wanted one, because I'd had R8s before with the manual. I thought they're fantastic. I thought they're not going to lose any money. And then she said she'd rather have had a Ferrari. So I never even drove it. So VVS, I bought it from them, resold it. But yeah, they started to, make me think about previous recessions, because do I go as the aggressor now, or do I cut back? And I decided to go forward and push. And my mind was really negative, and you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't. So the first one was the 22B. So I was negotiating on a very low mile 22B. Now, if people remember back, there was a 300-mile car, appreciating classics, and I rung them. My friend said, Richard, there's a Subaru 22B, like, why don't you get it? So I rung them and said, how much is it? They said £300,000, and I just went quiet. I just went like, hello, sorry, I must have the wrong number. You just said £300,000. He said, yes, £300,000. I went, I thought you were going to say £100,000. He said, no, it's £300,000. Okay, left it at that. That then sells, but I said to him, if there's another one, give me a shout. So he gave me a shout. I said, oh, it's a 5,000 mile one. I said, how much is that? He said, it's 155,000. I think, 155,000. I sold my last one for £23,000 with the same mileage. So mentally, I'm done in, like anyone is. You pay more for a car you had, you mentally have to get over that. And it's hard to do. So I was like, I'm a lunatic. Because my brother's been saying to me, Richard, you've got to buy 22Bs, they're going to go up in value, and they're 60,000. Now we're like 155. And this is 6 weeks into lockdown. So I've just sold the Mitsubishi. I'm like, I'm a lunatic, what am I doing? I thought, no, I'm going to do it. They're going to go up. And I've got the world car. So then I thought, well, we want to get this, why don't we do a rally and road collection? So that's what I started on. So cars start rising. Thinking, bloody hell, they're going up. It's COVID times, they're going up. I can't end up getting another 22B. Because the one that I bought with 5,000 miles is now 225,000 in 6 months. So I get another 22B. I think, right, because I wanted one to drive. Because everyone says to me, you can't drive the car. Because I bought it, and I thought I'd drive it, do some miles. And then I thought, no, this is crazy. You've got to look after this car. And that's how it got me into Evo magazine, as well, which was one of the best things I've done as a car. Because you imagine for me, I've got every Evo magazine from 001. And that's how I do it. If I buy a car now, like when I was doing the Vantage projects, I get the Evo magazines and I read them all. Anything with Vantage, I just go through, all in my office, all lined up, pick them out, go through any car they had. And then I got a call to say they're looking for a 22B. I thought, I was right to get that 22B because now I'm going to go on Evo. And got the call, went up with them, Yorkshire Moors. Fantastic, Dickie Meaden driving it. I had a fantastic, it was one of the best days of my life, I think, because Evo to me was it's just the best magazine. It was that 001, I had the 22B and the 355. And those were the cars I wanted. And I had a great time up there with them. Actually, very interesting watching them film and how they work, having dinner with the guys. And obviously it was difficult because these were sort of just coming out of lockdown, so everything's not too touchy-feely at the time. But I get on really well with Dickie Meaden now, see him. So that 22B has led to lots of opportunities. Finished my road and rally collection. So we've got the Ford WRC with the Ford Focus RS, really good one of those. The Lancia rally car with a Lancia Evo, which I'm having refurbished at the moment. We've got the Subaru 22B with the Subaru World car. And then we had the Escort Cosworth story, which was, again, with COVID, I think everyone, if you start thinking that you're going to die, things ramp up a little bit with what you want to do. And I always wanted an Escort Cosworth. And at the time, I kept saying to myself, Richard, stop buying all these cars. But I thought, if I don't buy an Escort Cosworth now, I know they're going to be 150K. And that just kept going through my mind. So actually at the fishing lake again, I was fishing, dangerous having my iPad with me. I actually bought the road car and the rally car in the same hour. So I found the rally car first, and just messaged the guy. We agreed a price, and I went down and saw that. And on the same night, I bought a road car as well. And I got the colour I wanted as well because the Escort Cosworth eluded me. And these are sort of bad decisions, or not bad decisions, but things at the time when I was sort of 23. Ford Storm once had Escort Cosworth out the front. I wanted that car really badly, wanted it, and I went in there and put a deposit on it, and I didn't have the money for the car. But I just was up there, I was driving past it every evening. I want that car. And the reason I couldn't afford it was the insurance. Because what was happening was when I rung for the insurance, it was £12,000. And the car was 22. And this was back when they were being stolen and everything. So I said to my friend, I said, can you help me? He's a car dealer. Can you go in there and try and get my deposit back? He said, yeah, I'll go in there for you. So I sat outside and I just didn't want to lose face. I'm young, 23, and or 22 even. He went in there, said, Richard, I've done it, but I didn't get your deposit back. I said, what do you mean? He said, I got you an Escort diesel. I said, what? He said, yeah, I got you an Escort 1.6 diesel. I said, I don't want an Escort diesel. He said, well, it's the only way of getting your money back. I said, yeah, but I've got another car. I don't. So anyway, I didn't want to lose face again, and I ended up with this silver 1.6 Escort diesel. And from that time, I'd always wanted this Escort Cosworth, and now I've actually got it. I am really happy. And when I drove, I thought, a bit like Meet Your Heroes, is it going to drive awful and that? But actually, I really love it to drive. And also, you can put newer tyres on stuff now, so you get that better traction, better grip. So I was really happy with that. And they haven't gone up as much as I thought, but I think they will, and that's why I went in. And if I had the opportunity for another one, I'd probably buy another one. The rally car, different matter. Now, one thing with these histories of these rally cars, you have to really look into them. And because of how I am, I just love learning. That's one of the big things of YouTube and that for me. I love learning. I will never stop learning, love it. Couldn't think of anything better than learning. I looked into this car and I saw it had a finished plate. And the car had a MWM, Malcolm Wilson Motorsport plate. And I spoke to Stuart. Stuart went and picked up the car for me. He gave a phone call. Hi, Richard. Richard, check out that finished plate it was on. So I got them in the boot. Check it out. You just bought a podium car. It's 200 grand. So pay 100 grand, 200 grand. That's how some of the cars and that and what I've been doing. And then Escort Cosworth, I think could go 150. That's how I've been buying them. So they're some of the latest ones. Then I had a Range Rover hybrid, probably shouldn't have sold that. But again, I'd done 25,000 miles and was offered the money I paid for it. And I enjoyed that car. I mean, it was 120,000 for a hybrid Range Rover back in 2013. I bought it in COVID times, early on, because I thought I want a hybrid. And I worked out they made 164. No one bought them. Brilliant car. And I thought, oh, I'll sell that. And I sold it for more than I paid for it. And on 25,000 mile trips to Devon's, because you couldn't go abroad, going to Devon, back here, Devon. Absolutely loved that car. And I thought recently, what am I going to get? I thought, I've always wanted a Rolls Royce. My granddad had a Rolls Royce back in the day, an old Rolls Royce. And I thought, I love the Wraith. And I remembered they'd done an inspired by music car, but they were like 300. And I thought, I'm just going to have a look. Have these Wraiths come down in value? I'm thinking, if they're not allowed in London, these cars are going to come down in value. So I went on there and I saw 150, 160. And I saw one at McLaren. And the pictures were awful. I thought, this has just been traded in. And we ended up doing a deal at 133k for the car, inspired by music car. Then I looked into it more again. There's only 9. It's one of 9 cars. Hadn't seen the colour because they said it was brown, but it's not. It's a beautiful copper black. I've had that 6 weeks. One's just come on the market for 180 with the same mileage. So these are the cars I'm picking. I'm remembering stuff and then going back to it and then trying to pick it at the right time. And it's all about timing with the cars. But what a car. That Wraith, it could be my best car. I just love cruising around. My wife hates it. She won't go in it. My kids always say, what car are you picking me up in? But they do like the Wraith, but they don't like any of the other stuff I got. And then obviously the big thing for me was I went on holiday recently, first time we've been away since COVID, and I thought, right, what I'm going to do in those 2 weeks, because when I'm on holiday, that's my biggest time of thinking. That's the most work I ever do. And everyone thinks you go on holiday to... I am relaxing because when I'm in control, I'm relaxed. And I thought, right, I'm going to look at the businesses and I look at the cars, I'm going to think about a car. And I said, so just before I'm going away, I started to look at what would be the biggest purchase and the most gain I could make, and could I make £1 million? Could I make £1 million on one car? What could it be? What could I do? And I started really analysing it, looking at it, and I thought, well, I think it should be something that has electric and has hybrid and is low emission. So I went into it a bit more, and I thought, well, it's got to be the Holy Trinity. It's got to be one of those cars. But I'd never really looked at them, if I'm honest, and I think it was because I couldn't afford them. Sometimes when I think I can't afford stuff, I don't look at it that hard. So anyway, I seen the LaFerrari and didn't do a lot for me in showrooms and that. The Porsche I did really like the Porsche, and I knew it would be fantastic to drive. And then I was looking at the P1, but because I had such a bad experience with 675, I thought, if you buy a P1, Richard, you're crazy again. You lose another £1 million. And I started to read all the Haggerty reports and all this stuff, and they said P1 best investment car, 2022. I thought, right, okay. So I'm on the plane and it's got Wi-Fi, and I start messaging a few people saying, and by the time the flight had finished, I'd bought a P1. And I bought a one owner, 200 mile car. And I thought, I'm just going to keep that car and it's going to go up in value. That's the biggest purchase I've ever done. I haven't actually sat in the car yet. It's still at VVS. It's probably been there 4 or 6 weeks. I like leaving stuff. I don't want to just rush in and drive it. I will do a review on it soon. But again, it's thinking about cars, going into quite detail. Like they're zero emission in America, those cars. So there's all things like the 22B. It's the 25-year rule. Everyone's waiting. The low mileage 22B, I rejected pretty much a world record offer recently because they think they're going to go to 750 to £1 million 22Bs. I can't get my head around it, but if that's what it is, that's what it is. And I can see there's rarity and stuff, and that's where I'm going. That's where I'm heading. So for me at the moment, it's more just enjoying my passion, try not to lose too much money and make money if I can. And a lot of them I have done really well recently. I made some mistakes, other ones, but I've always got the enjoyment of the car. And it's the same like with the P1. If it don't go up at all, fine. But I can see it and I can look at it, I can touch it, I can feel it. So instead of going down probably a property route, I went down a car route. And I've really enjoyed it because it's my passion. Welcome to Challenge the Road. So coming into the YouTube side, obviously for me, that was a big thing during COVID to start that, because being a very private person, not many people know about my cars, and I enjoyed them myself. That's why I bought them. But I thought, could I share it a bit more? Could people maybe, learn a bit from my knowledge, or could I do better reviews? I don't know. And I also wanted to test myself because I'd never been on camera. I'd only ever spoken to my staff at meals, and I'd only done that recently. I never wanted to stand up, never wanted to be on show, that's not me. And I thought, can I do it? And I've got some nice cars, and I think people would maybe like them. So we went so I decided to start Challenge the Road, and I met Dean Macy at my fishing lake because fishing was one of the first things with COVID that opened, and Dean come down and done some fishing, and he said, I started to talk a bit about cars. He said, I didn't even know you owned any cars. I said, yeah, I've got a Lancia rally car. You got what? Lancia rally car. That's my favourite car. And I said, okay, well, I'm thinking of doing this video. Do you want to come along? Yeah, I do. I said, okay, well, what about next week? So anyway, that's how it started. We went to Buellwater. This kept breaking down. I had to push it into place. Wasn't running, but I brought the GT8 along, and we done the video. And Dean said to me, what's the script? I said, I don't know. I said, we'll just talk. He said, have you done this before? I said, no, it's the first time. And that was probably better for me. And I just went into it, and we spoke about cars, and he could see my passion for cars and driving. And obviously he loved the GT8, and we done that. And we went on and we made some really good videos, actually really cool ones. And the channel's there really for me to express how I feel about cars, how they're driven, and my knowledge of driving. So yeah, then I ended up starting the Vantage CTR program, which I'm just hugely passionate about, and I think that is something that is going to be in 5 years' time. A lot of people will be buying these cars from me, and I have had probably 8 or 9 Vantages, manuals, but always knew the car wasn't quite as it should be. So the first one I done, I thought, right, I'm just going to buy the car. I'd been planning for sort of 2 years, thinking I could do my own car. And I just wanted that little bit of confidence to be able to go, right, yeah, I can I do it? I think I can. What should I use? I always liked retro Porsches, but when I went to Goodwood and I saw some of the Rennsport cars at 300,000, I thought, I'm not sure I see the value there. So I'm going to do something different. I'm going to go for Vantages, and I know that they had dropped down to like 18k, but I thought, I know they'd be a bit more now, but not mega money. I'm going to take one and I'm going to change the colour of it to green. I'm going to put gold wheels, and I'm going to get the suspension bang on, and I'm going to change the, and I'm basically going to do everything I did when I was like 18 to 21, changing wheels, and I'm going to have loads of fun. And I'm going to do all different tyres. I'm a tyre freak. I mean, I just watch tyre review videos all the time. You know, I know like the Continental 7's the best tyre now. I got that on one of the Astons, got Michelin on the other. Started to do that, and I really enjoyed it. And we've actually got a facility now to make the Vantages with Stuart. And I thought, so I started with the 4.3. Done all the suspension and that. Pretty happy with the car. I've actually still got the 001 here, and I use it, and I haven't sold it because I use it and I like it. It took a bit of time doing the exhaust, so it's probably taken me a year to put that car together. And then I bought another grey car and turned that into this fantastic green with bronze. Unfortunately, Jay done a video for me on the car, and the next day I had a phone call and that was sold, and I hadn't even quite finished it. The guy just wanted it there and then, and he actually traded me in a 993 retro Porsche, which was a bit strange. I thought, oh, I'm going to keep that as my sort of go-to car with what I'm doing with the Vantages. So I've got the 993 there, and I've got the Vantages. And yeah, the 002's gone, 001 I'm driving, 003 I thought I'd go for an S, a 4.7, because the prices of the 4.3s were going up. So I've got this fantastic 4.7S that I've got a stand at Goodwood Revival, which I've had for the last 3 years, which has you know, been a car event I absolutely love. So I've got a stand there as Challenge the Road. I'm going to have that car there, and I've really gone to town on it as a road car. Carbon bonnet, I've gone the best KW3 suspension. So that's going to be for sale there. It's not something for me to make money on. This is my hobby. All I want is someone to drive it and go, oh, I love that car. That's all I want. It's not about money for me. And none of the businesses have really ever been that. The businesses have always been a vehicle for me to get a car or it was never about an amount of money. I couldn't even care less. But if you said to me, I could earn money and get a 355, that's what I want. That's in terms. So my whole life has just been dedicated to cars. So 003 will be done. That'll be going, as I say, to Goodwood in September. And I've really enjoyed that. And I've got some other things I want to do with the gearbox. No one seems to be able to do the gearbox. So for me, it's going to be a car that's going to keep going. I think it's a fantastic looking car. And there'll be more and more I can do. But sometimes I get to the point of the law of diminishing returns as well, where you can actually ruin the car, which I don't want to get to. And I feel I'm at a really nice point with that car now. You know, my dad had plenty of money, and we had nice cars, and he got me a car when I was 17. I had a BMW 525 Alpina that I'd done. Actually resprayed that within 6 weeks. So you see the theme with CTR. Had the best stereo, I had all that, and I had a fantastic life. And I was playing golf, and I wanted to be a professional golfer. And all I would do is play golf in the morning, go fishing in the afternoon. And that's, you know, and I had a nice car. And it's taken me probably 20 years, I think, to get back to that level and be able to. What I wanted to do is I wanted to go fishing in my Lancia rally car or an Escort Cosworth with my fishing stuff in the car, turn up, go fishing, enjoy that and come home. And that's what I wanted to do. And I'm pretty much there now. And that leads on to my hobby, you know, which is, again, from Paul, is fishing and lakes. And I'm fortunate now to have sort of 9 lakes, being heavily dyslexic to the point that, you know, my friends wrote my text messages to my wife now, because she's a school teacher. Heavily dyslexic people are drawn to the outside, and a lot of them are heavily drawn to fishing. I was offered a lake in Erridge, 5-acre lake, and come up for sale, and I said, yep, I'll buy it. My biggest carp was a 20-pound carp from Paul's Lake, 2001. I exchange on this lake about 2016, and I get a phone call from the lawyer. I'm with my little daughter Jenny, we're in a cafe. Richard, you own the lake now. It's brilliant, great. I said, Jenny, let's go down there. She's only like 4 or 5. Let's go down the lake. Next phone call, Richard, I've caught the biggest fish in the lake. Do you want to see it? I'll keep it for you. I said, you know what, that's brilliant, because I completed today on the lake and I'm heading down. I'll keep it for you. I started talking to the guys about the fish, and all the fish, the big fish are names. We all call them the names, a bit like pets. And one was called Blobby and one was called Little Blobby. Go down the lake. Jenny takes a picture of me at the lake. Walk round. There's the fish there, and it's 37 pounds. He's weighed it all. Puts it back. Just as he's putting back the fish, I say to him, "Why is it called Blobby?" He said there was a musician called Paul who had a lake and he died, and they put 2 of his fish in here. And I just froze. And it was like the sky opened up. I just thought, I've caught that fish. That's my biggest fish. And that's Paul's fish. So what had happened was, at the funeral that I went to, his friend owned that lake. His wife asked him to take the 2 biggest fish he had bought, which is another story because we picked them up in a P1. So back then, it's not like we had the nets and that. We actually put them in the back of the P1 in towels, these 20-pound, wrapped them round, put them in the P1, head off to his house in like 5 minutes and put the carp in. Now, I've had a call on the day I've completed from the guys, the biggest fish in the lake, and it's his fish. And I'd caught it, and it was my biggest fish back then in 2001, which I don't, you know, a lot of things have happened and fate and that. I can't see me ever beating that. And it was just a fantastic reference back to Paul, that his fish were in there. I've bought the lake that we were always going out trying to find, and those fish are still there today.
Well, there we have it. That's not the ending I expected, but I really don't think I can better it. I want to say a huge thank you, of course, to Richard, but also to you for watching. As ever, don't forget to hit the like button, comment down below, and if you want to know more about the man or his cars, please check out Richard's channel, Challenge the Road. For now, from us both, bye-bye.